You think you're thinking, but you're not. You're looping. Right now, as you hear these words, there's a voice in your head. It's commenting, analyzing, planning your response. Maybe it's already 3 thoughts ahead, preparing arguments or judgments about what comes next. This voice promises control, understanding, mastery over your experience. But here's the uncomfortable truth. It's a phantom, a broken record spinning endlessly in the dark corners of your psyche. The ancient symbol of the ouroboros shows a serpent devouring its own tail, eternal consumption without nourishment. This is your thinking mind, not the brilliant intelligence you imagine, but a wheel spinning in mud, movement without progress, energy trapped in orbit around nothing. You've been told that more thinking equals more control. But what if the opposite were true? What if beneath this mental noise lies a deeper intelligence, waiting in silence? We live in a culture that worships thinking. The more complex your analysis, the more intelligent you appear. The more you can anticipate, plan, and dissect, the more mastery you seem to possess over your life. But Jung understood something profound when he said, "People don't have ideas. Ideas have people." You don't control your thoughts. They control you. Modern neuroscience calls it the default mode network, a web of brain regions that becomes hyperactive when we're not focused on the present moment. It's the neural substrate of rumination, worry, and endless self-referential chatter. What science maps in brain scans, mystics have known for millennia. The ordinary mind is not your friend. It's a mask worn by the ego, a shadow cast by the false self. Think about your last sleepless night. Hours spent in mental loops, replaying conversations, rehearsing future scenarios, analyzing problems that may never exist. This wasn't intelligence at work. This was the false mind performing its favorite trick, mistaking motion for progress, noise for wisdom. The tragedy isn't that you think too much. The tragedy is that you've confused this mechanical chattering with your true nature. Picture a hall of mirrors, each reflection more distorted than the last. This is how the looping mind operates. It takes a single experience, a slight from a colleague, an uncertain future, a memory of failure, and fractures it into infinite pieces. Each fragment reflects back into the others, creating an endless cascade of mental imagery that feels important but leads nowhere. The loop is seductive because it mimics purposeful activity. Your mind tells you that if you just think about the problem one more time, from one more angle, you'll finally solve it. Just like the ouroboros believes that if it keeps consuming itself, it will eventually be satisfied. But notice the fuel that feeds these loops. Fear, guilt, anticipation of loss. The false mind doesn't run on curiosity or genuine inquiry. It runs on the energy of unresolved emotion, spinning around wounds that never heal because they're never truly felt. This is why you can spend years thinking about the same relationship, the same career decision, the same existential question, without ever reaching resolution. You're not thinking your way toward truth. You're using thought to avoid the deeper encounter that truth requires. Jung spoke of psychic energy, libido, as the fundamental force of consciousness. This energy naturally seeks expression, growth, transformation. When it flows freely, you experience vitality, creativity, authentic engagement with life. But when it becomes trapped in repetitive patterns, it turns stagnant, creating the very loops that torment you. Modern research on neuroplasticity shows us that repetitive thought patterns literally carve deeper grooves in the brain. The more you loop, the stronger the neural pathways become. What began as a momentary worry becomes a superhighway of anxiety. What started as reasonable planning becomes obsessive mental rehearsal. Imagine a wheel spinning in mud. Tremendous energy is being expended. The wheel turns faster and faster, throwing dirt in all directions, creating the impression of urgent activity. But look closer. There's no forward movement. All that power, all that effort, all that noise, and the wheel remains exactly where it started. This is your false mind in action. It appropriates the tremendous creative energy of consciousness and turns it into a closed circuit. The very force that could propel you toward growth becomes the prison that keeps you trapped in familiar suffering. The loop mimics progress while ensuring stagnation. It feels like work while accomplishing nothing. It promises resolution while perpetuating the very conflicts it claims to solve. But there is another way of knowing. Beneath the surface chatter, behind the endless mental commentary, a different kind of intelligence waits. Lao Tzu whispered this truth 25 centuries ago. Stop thinking and end your problems. Not because problems disappear, but because the compulsive mental spinning that amplifies suffering comes to rest. This deeper intelligence doesn't speak in the language of loops. It doesn't rehearse, analyze, or project. It simply perceives. It responds. It knows without the intermediary of mental processing. Think about moments when you've acted from this place. Maybe you were walking in nature and suddenly felt a profound sense of peace. Not because you thought your way into it, but because you stopped thinking long enough to notice what was already present. Maybe you were listening to music and lost track of the mental commentary, dissolving into pure experience. Maybe you were helping someone in crisis and words came through you that surprised even you with their wisdom. In these moments, you weren't using your mind. You were being used by something larger, more intelligent, more alive than the mechanical processes of thought. Neuroscience confirms what contemplatives have always known. When the default mode network quiets, through meditation, flow states, or deep presence, different regions of the brain become active. Areas associated with direct perception, empathy, and creative insight come online. The brain literally reorganizes itself around presence rather than past-future projection. Silence isn't empty. It's pregnant with possibilities that thinking can never touch. The way out of the loop isn't to suppress thought. That would just create another loop about not looping. The path is subtler, more elegant. You learn to unmask the false mind by becoming its witness rather than its victim. Ancient traditions speak of the inner observer, the part of you that can watch thoughts arise and pass away without being swept into their current. This isn't detachment from life, it's intimacy with reality as it actually is, rather than as your mind insists it should be. Consider the practice of symbolic journaling. Instead of analyzing your thoughts, you track their patterns like a naturalist studying animal behavior. You begin to notice the triggers, the rhythms, the emotional signatures that fuel different types of loops. Not to judge them, but to understand their symbolic language. What is this worry really protecting you from feeling? What does this endless planning help you avoid encountering? What would happen if you stopped feeding this particular mental pattern for just one day? Dreams offer another pathway into this deeper intelligence. While your conscious mind loops, your unconscious speaks in symbols, metaphors, and images that bypass the false mind's defenses. Dream tracking becomes a way of hearing the voice of your authentic self beneath the noise of acquired personality. The symbol that guides this transformation is the labyrinth. Unlike a maze, which is designed to confuse, a labyrinth has only one path, winding but ultimately leading to the center. The loops of the false mind are like being lost in a maze of your own making. But when you stop trying to figure out the route and simply follow the path beneath your feet, you discover that stillness itself reveals the way forward. The goal isn't to eliminate thought, but to restore its proper function. Thought becomes a servant rather than a master, a tool rather than an identity. When you need to plan, you plan. When you need to analyze, you analyze. But when these functions are complete, you return to the spaciousness of pure awareness. So here we are, full circle. You came thinking you were a thinking being, but now you might sense the deeper truth. You are awareness itself, temporarily identified with the mechanical processes of mind. The loops weren't wrong, they were just misunderstood. The false mind isn't your enemy. It's a veil that consciousness wears when it forgets its own nature. There's a simple inquiry that can serve as your compass. What am I afraid to feel beneath this thought? Because beneath every loop lies an emotion that never got to be fully experienced, a truth that never got to be fully acknowledged. The false mind loops to protect you from something it believes you can't handle. But you are so much vaster than your mind imagines. Step back. Listen. The true mind doesn't speak in loops. It reveals. You've never actually been trapped. You've been free all along, simply dreaming you were the prisoner of your own thoughts. Thank you for watching.